Shalom, my name is Rabbi Goldie Milgram. I direct ReclaimingJudaism.org and Reclaiming Judaism Press. As a teacher of Torah and Jewish spiritual practice, I find it very interesting to be looking at the Torah portion Mishpatim today. When we look at this portion, we see that it is full of statutes, of rules. It reads almost like a civil law code. Now, it's always important to see where a passage is located in the Torah. And this section comes right after the experience at Sinai of all of the Israelites and all of the slaves who left with them, as they all become one people and accept and agree to live mitzvah-centered rather than self-centered lives. You have the commandments there. But what comes next are the details. One has to keep reading in order to get the full revelation, the full meaning. An extremely important phrase opens this section, which it says that just as these, Rabbi Ishmael explains the phrase, and these that connects these two Torah portions, the phrase and these connects the prior commandments at Sinai with these details of the law of divine providence and equal authority. Rabbi Ishmael is found in the Mechilta, which is an early Talmudic Jewish source that comments on the Torah portion itself and helps to bridge the meaning from one generation to another. A phrase that we find in Mishpatim is Exodus 21, chapter 21, verses 22 to 23. Here we read that when men fight, two men are fighting, and one of them pushes a pregnant woman, and a miscarriage results, but no other damage ensues, the one responsible shall be fined. Two men are fighting is the story that the Torah brings us. A miscarriage results. She loses her baby, her fetus, really, we should say, but no other damage ensues. The one responsible shall then be fined, says the Torah. Now, isn't that interesting? Why does it say that the one responsible shall be fined? Wouldn't you expect, just projecting onto the Bible, that it would be considered to be murder? But it's not murder. A fine for the loss of the child is dictated by the biblical text to go from the man that caused the miscarriage to her husband in compensation for the loss of the potential life of the fetus. In those days, women were owned by their husbands. Thank God, no longer the case in our times. So the property value of the child went to the master in that case. Now, what's important for us is that this text creates a big difference between Judaism and many of the other primarily Christian traditions that we experience in American society. Christianity, in some of its denominations, developed the idea that the death of a fetus, deliberate death of a fetus, would be considered murder. It is not so and is never so in Judaism because the Bible clearly states that it is not so. Judaism understands that the moment of a soul's entry into the body is a secret known only to God. It is a mystery beyond us, whatever God might mean to you. There's no doctrine about this. There are many opinions in the tradition about when the soul enters the body. The most one is to understand that when the child is existing is when the fetus has begun its descent from the womb to the point where its head has left the womb. Shoulders are beginning to appear. And now what we have is a child that can take a breath. And it is when you take your first breath in our tradition that life begins, according to the preponderance of sources. And when at the end of your life you exhale your last breath, when your life has ended. So Judaism cannot be pigeonholed as pro-choice or pro-life. It is really pro-faith that the life that comes into the world is defined by its actual act of taking a breath. That is when a fetus becomes a baby or an infant. Now, there's nothing crass or hard-minded about this, because when we look in our tradition at the stages of pregnancy, the decision as to whether a child would be allowed to come from that fetus, whether it would ultimately be born, is going to depend on the circumstances of what has happened to the mother. In Judaism, the mother's life always comes first, always. She is a living, breathing entity. The fetus is not. She may well have other children who need her attention and loving care. So our sages, for example, the Rambam, describes a fetus that endangers the life of the mother as a rodef. And it is written in his hand that it is permitted to dissect the child in her belly, either through drugs or by surgery, because this one who pursues her could kill. But once his head emerges, or her head, we don't harm it, because we don't sacrifice one life for another. That is the nature of the world. That's the Mishnah Torah, Rotzeach v'Shmirat Nefesh, chapter 1, verse 9. Now, this tradition is also upheld by Rashi, a medieval French commentator, very important and central as well to Jewish thought and Jewish practice. In the case of a woman who is struggling to give birth, and she is in danger, writes Rashi on Sanhedrin, on the Talmud 72b of Sanhedrin, if a woman is struggling to give birth and she's in danger, the midwife stretches forth both her hands and dissects the baby and draws it out limb by limb, because as long as it hasn't emerged into the world, it is not a person. Lav nefesh hu is the Hebrew. It is not a person, not a nefesh, and it is permitted to kill it to save its mother, but once its head has emerged, we cannot harm it. That's when it becomes a person. So the decision in Judaism that we learn in Mishpatim will be to always protect the survival of the mother first. And subsequent generations included incidences such as rape, profound genetic diseases such as Tay-Sachs disease. There are many considerations for when Judaism would consider the godly thing to do, if the mother is so willing, would be an abortion. We would rarely do this, and only after great, deep, and holy deliberation, not as a method of birth control, but as a method to protect the sanity and health of the mother. I hope this has been instructive to you and interesting, and welcome your contact at reclaimingjudaism.org, where you'll find my email, and I look forward to hearing from you. Shalom.